Are we good? We're good. I'm going to go ahead and call the Cuyahoga County Finance and Budgeting Committee meeting for Monday, June 1st to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Calling the roll, Mr. Greenspan.
Here.
Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller is absent. Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Hairston. Mr. Hairston is absent. Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Schron.
Here.
Ms. Brown.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Very good, thank you. Any public comment related to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
Okay,
Can we make a motion to excuse Mr. Miller and Mr. Harrison?
sure, I'll accept that motion. Is there a second? Second. Motion's made and second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Please excuse members Miller and Hairston. Before us are the meeting minutes from the May 18th meeting. Is there a
We approve the minutes of the May 18th meeting.
motion's made to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. Before us, we have one matter referred to committee. If the clerk will please read the item.
Resolution 2015-0093, a resolution authorizing the use of a portion of the proceeds of the Cuyahoga County Sales Tax Revenue Bonds, Series 2014 County Facilities Improvement, in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $14 million for the purposes of paying certain costs of demolition of blighted and nuisance properties and making grants therefore, authorizing other actions related to the use of such proceeds, and declaring the necessity that this resolution become immediately effective.
Thank you. Could you please read that again? I realize that you are struggling. I apologize for asking you to read that. This item was actually held over from our last committee meeting. Is there, who from the administration is ready to address this item?
Good afternoon, Ken Surratt from Development. I believe prior to this meeting, you all have received a copy of the contract. It's on schedule to be on the BOC agenda for next Monday, June 8th. This is the first year contract of up to $350,000, which then will be followed up by two 5-year contracts is the plan. So I don't know if there are any other comments or questions. Again, this is just repurposing $14 million of those dollars that were committed for that IT project for the demolition project. And now I hope that you have comfort that the IT project is underway, that you will support passing this.
Right. And if we remember, there were two items actually addressed with this. Number one, it was the repurposing of already issued bonds from the data center, the county-based data center, to the demolition fund, and then secondarily, the contract with the data center to ensure that that contract is in place. The concern being that if we are to redirect these funds in advance of the data center contract being entered into, and the data center contract was to not materialize, then we would have to identify $14 million in order to fund the data center. If I can ask Mr. Mowry to kind of give us an update on the data center project.
Yeah, Jeff Mowry, Chief Information Officer. Yeah, just a quick update. It's actually, I believe, technically an operating agreement. It's not, I think, technically a contract. It's a state type of agreement. It is passed through the law office. It is currently with the fiscal office. It's scheduled to be reviewed by the county executive this week and beyond for June 8th, as Ken mentioned. We have been making some good progress with the state. One of the big areas that we've been working on, in addition to planning for the data center move, I might have mentioned before, is the utilization of the state's mainframe services that they have at the state. Currently, we have a large mainframe. It's a very expensive, very large piece of computer equipment. It's actually underutilized here at the county. I would say we're about 70% of the way through the testing process to take all of the software that we have on our existing mainframe and run it down at the state. So far, that testing has materialized very well. I'm a little premature to give any cost savings, but we expect it to be somewhere in that 100,000 plus range if we can be able to maintain, let the state run the mainframe services for us versus trying to run it ourselves. So far the state, I have to, hands off. They've been extremely cooperative. They've been really doing a lot of very heavy lifting IBM IT consulting at no cost for us as part of this move. So things are going along very well. Once we have the green light on the contract with the state, then they're ready to start actually building up the environment for us. So we're just kind of waiting on that.
Okay, do you envision, let's break it down into the two components I spoke of earlier. Obviously, one you can address, and the other is a separate subject. But as far as the data center contract, it's going to be before the Board of Control on Monday.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, assuming that it passes through the fiscal and county executives preview.
Okay, and you're comfortable with the content of the contract as well as the anticipated service delivery?
Yes.
Okay. And so if this committee was to pass this out of committee as a second reading next Tuesday, well, that will sufficiently give enough time for the administration to do its review, have the item come out on Monday for Board of Control, and then have a third reading. Is that an accurate
Yes.
chronology? And you're comfortable with that, going for third reading?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the committee on this? Let's talk about the data center component first.
Yeah, this is on the data center, and just more of a comment, Mr. Chairman, that it's my understanding that Kevin Goodwin from Blue Bridge met with you and
Sure.
was, even though he stands at risk of losing some business personally from his own corporation, he said that this is in the best interest of the county, best interest of the public, and he was complimentary about the way the whole package is put together, even though he's in a commercial service that technically is going to lose probably some business as a result of it. But he said he was very pleased to say that to see this was a program put together. So I just want to put that at least out there that Blue Bridge from Kevin was very supportive.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gallagher, just ahead. We're discussing if there are any questions on the data center component of the 14 million. Did you? Okay, so we're good. The other component, obviously, is the redirection of the bond proceeds, which is a different discussion, but one I believe that this committee conducted 2 weeks ago. So if there are no other discussions on that subject, any comments or questions? I'll make a motion that Resolution 2015-0093 be referred to council for second reading.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that motion carries. That item is referred to council. Thank you. The next item on the agenda, and I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead, I'll read it, if that's okay with the clerk. As an item for discussion, this was an item that was presented on the biweekly fiscal agenda at our last meeting, and I asked that the item be pulled and sent to this committee just for discussion purposes. This item has to do with additional appropriation for the Huntington Park Garage. It is effectively a temporary use of reserves with the anticipated repayment through the issuance of future debt. And Mr. Dever, did you wish to address this item?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Michael Dever, Department of Public Works. Also with me is David Marquardt, our county engineer. David's very much involved in the project right now that we have before you, and I was about to give you an update on where we are with the project.
Okay. Well, and let me just preface by saying that I pulled this item for its financial component. The operational side of this will be discussed at either a Public Works Committee meeting or a committee of the whole to be determined at a future date. So it's important that we understand the operational side of it as well, but the bonding component was really, or the financing component was why I pulled it and referred it and asked to be referred to this committee.
Right, and what we have before you, obviously, that was at the Board of the Control meeting this morning also was the change order, so our consultant can continue to move forward and put together the bidding documents so that we can put it out to bid in the very near future. I know that there's going to be a few opportunities that this item will be coming before the council for discussion, but our main goal over the next few weeks here is to get this item back on track so we can get it out to bid.
Well, and the reason that I asked that item be pulled from the Board of Control agenda today was because of the lack of information, I guess, on council's part at this point to understand the full scope of what the project is. And so the reason I pulled it was before we fully understood why we're spending another $343,000. I thought it was important that we understand what the real plan is for the Huntington Park Garage.
Understood. Okay, thanks.
Good afternoon. In 2011 and 2012, URS was scoped to prepare an assessment of the structural and architectural needs for the Huntington Park Garage. That study did not include any mechanical, electrical, or plumbing concerns. It was mainly focused on the actual concrete conditions and structural conditions that existed at the time. In 2013, an emergency repair was done by the Department of Public Works that incorporated some of the recommendations that were in the URS study. They were primarily the emergency type work that had to be done. And that 2013 emergency repair project was about $1 million worth of work. Did some work on the central ramp, expansion joints, metal doors, and repairs to the concrete, some of the repairs. In 2014, the Department of Public Works entered into an agreement with a consultant, Weiss Cheney Elsner Associates, WJE, and that contract was for $659,300. The work that was scoped at that time was to perform an in-depth assessment and perform design of the improvements that included verification of the URS 2012 study and excluded the work that was done. And so they took all of the recommendations that were in that report, verified them, and we came to an agreement in regards to the structural nature of the repairs. The second scoped item at that time was to assess the condition of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing and fire protection systems that were part of the Huntington Park Garage and make recommendations in regards to the necessary improvements for those parts of the structure. That study also included the life safety and code compliance issues, as well as the condition assessment of those additional items. Their scope included also performing a parking study to review the traffic flow and the current striping plans to try and achieve the most efficient layout that we could get of the parking system. The first thing that WJE was supposed to do is present the study findings to us, and we received those at I believe it was at the end of 2014. That study revealed that there was significant work requirements that were necessary in the fire suppression system, electrical and mechanical systems of the structure. And it also revealed significant architectural work necessary to replace the waterproofing and paving on the top deck of the structure. The aesthetic upgrades were also considered. In terms of aesthetics, there were requirements with the agreement with the Hilton Hotel that had to be incorporated into the design. Those improvements related to work that had to be done with the elevators, the wayfinding, ADA compliance, and including parking gates and segregation of the parking areas for the hotel and convention center. Those upgrades included graphics and wayfinding, traffic gates for separating the parking, renovation of elevator lobbies, exterior cladding of the elevator lobby for architectural appearance, replacement of all the elevators, accessing the facility, storage and tunnel ventilation, emergency girder repairs. During the actual study period, we did have some structural issues that popped up. One was settlement of a girder that we had to design and construct shoring for during the investigative process. So WJE also did that particular work for us. The consultant's requesting $305,539 for scope changes, which would include the findings of the study that expanded their scope from just the original structural improvements on into all of the systems of the building. That change order also includes the design and construction administration for all of those particular items that were added. The timeline, we anticipate if we would get the go-ahead to move forward at this junction, advertising for bids around September of 2015 and starting construction the first quarter of 2016. And at that point, construction would take about a year and a half of timeline.
All right. I have some questions, but I'll defer to my colleagues. Are there any questions? Ms. Brown?
I was just curious, with the findings of the repairs, what would that increase the life expectancy of the parking lot to be? Do we know?
Yeah, the expectation of doing all of this work is that we'll get a 25-year design life out of the improvements.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Schron?
What is you say you had to coordinate with the Hilton in regards to some of these changes. What are some of the things that we had to do specifically to take care of the Hilton's needs?
Really, the elevator at the southeast corner of the building had to have metal cladding, architectural features on the upper part of it to improve its appearance, architectural appearance. The elevator itself was functioning fairly well, but we had to make sure it was reliable. So as we went through evaluation of all 5 of the elevators, we decided that we should focus on them and make sure that the elevators are functioning as safely as possible and as reliably as possible. So we've included replacement of all 5 of those elevators also. Within the elevator lobby, there'll be some architectural painting that's done inside for appearance. Basically, the hotel's looking for what you would call a pleasant experience for the customers that come into the assigned hotel parking areas and have to find their way to the elevator and then get across to the hotel. So in that pleasant experience, we've looked at brightening up the lighting of the facility, not necessarily through new lighting features, but through painting systems to try and brighten up the area so that it's easier to see and it's brighter. There's wayfinding that was included that's supposed to guide the people when they come and park, and they need to be confident that those people will see where to go once they get out of their vehicle and they know how to get to the hotel. So wayfinding has been included in the design.
Assuming there's no snowstorm and it's not January and they're not parking the car, because we have Is any of this including the connection covers that were discussed by Mr. Applebaum to link this parking garage, not obviously across the street, but to the street?
No, our project takes it right to the southeast corner of the garage. The covered walkway that's supposed to come up and connect will then come right up to the elevator lobby that we've improved and make a connection to that lobby.
So that's not our response. We're not doing anything in regards to that?
Not as part of, that's in discussion phase still, and I think we'll be coming forward in the near future after we see some renderings and some costing or pricing for that before. But that is not part of this project whatsoever.
Okay, but the way the lobby terminates from the elevator is, I hope, is being incorporated into a design to incorporate whatever might be discussed as far as enclosing it, so it does look like it's one continuous
Yeah,
building.
and that's correct, yes, it's actually happening. We're having discussions with both the Hilton Group, and there's a meeting forthcoming actually within the next few weeks here. But yeah, there'll definitely be a coordination effort going on there.
So whatever structural changes we're doing to the elevator lobby and the skin of it is going to be of the same kind of nature of the building, of whatever we're gonna make this walkway connection. I assume we're not making one out of stone and one out of aluminum, for example.
That's correct. There's definitely a connection between, as we know, the nexus that's going to need to happen, and that we don't have different materials and a different look, so
Yeah.
that it all works together.
Okay, is that intended to be enclosed, the walkway?
Well, depending on the price of it, I would not anticipate that it's a completely enclosed walkway, more of something that's covered, a cover over the top of it, but complete enclosure. I think that still needs to be vetted, and I think you'll be seeing some of those renderings in the near future.
Well, we were talking about a good experience for the client, and that just hard for me to believe we're gonna give them a really good experience without having some connection between the parking garage and the parking walkway, whatever it happens to be. And it's disappointing to a lot of us, I think, that we don't have an actual connection between the hotel and the parking. Let alone having to be outside, let alone now you're telling, or leaving with the impression it's gonna be open-sided out there. Be dragging your luggage, if you've ever done one of those trips in someplace, it's not a fun experience if you gotta be dragging luggage through a snowstorm in the middle of Cleveland out there. So I hope we can really try and give as good of experience as possible for our customers. Thanks.
Understood.
Mr. Gallagher, then Ms. Brown?
I seem to recall, and I still can't recall the meeting I missed when they took the parking out from underneath this building. But my thoughts were, at least from what I recall, was that this is gonna be valet parking. Those that are gonna be parking in that garage are gonna be few and far between as far as guests needing a pleasant experience. I'm more interested in a pleasant experience of the taxpayers' dollars in this. And it seems to me things are changing here, and I'm not necessarily pointing the finger at you. I think this is a question for Mr. Applebaum, so I'm going to go there. But my question to you is, what would, in ballpark, not going to hold you to it, tear down and build it right?
Well, actually, we did go through an analysis. We went back and forth on this since February and March of this year. What is the cost to take that garage down and then rebuild it again? David did some hard work on this, looking back and forth. But at the end of the day, we're thinking it's close to $50 million for us to put another structure in that, to rebuild that structure in that location. The most recent structure that was built was the Willard Park Garage about 5 years ago. And that's probably the closest, and considering it's on a slope right there. So it's a significant cost, because I think we wanted to jump into that before we went down this path of spending close to $20 million on making some improvements to
Well,
that.
that's what I'm looking at, and I'm not going to say this is a $20 million Band-Aid, but I'm just wondering if we're just not kicking the can down the road as Cuyahoga County is wanting to do.
Well,
You know, I've been around quite a while, and I actually used that garage for north of 30 years, and to say we're gonna get 25 more years out of that, I'm just skeptical.
right. Well, the thing with garages is you need to be able to put money back into them. After 6 or 7 years, there usually is some expansion joints that need replacement. There's going to be some concrete that'll be spalling off the wall. So you need to be constantly working on these garages. It's just not put the 20 million in it and then step back.
Oh, and I know it was ignored, like most things have been in this county.
And what we're trying to do is going forward here is to put as we go forward, as we identify the monies that are gonna help pay for this garage, and we're looking at the revenues from the garage itself, but at the same time, having some money set aside for those repairs in the long term, so that we're not just relying on the general fund at a later time, but to have money set aside at a later, when those repairs are needed, and it's typically 6 to 7 years out, as that's when you're gonna first see the first major repair that may be needed, and that's typically on the expansion joints.
Okay, Ms. Brown.
Actually, Councilman Gallagher asked, and my question was answered with regards to consideration for new and what that would cost. But one of the things I didn't catch, David, your last name and where you're from?
David Marquardt.
He's actually
I'm the design and construction administrator, but also the county engineer.
Okay.
so as the change in the county government, when the engineer's office left, that's part of the Public Works Department.
And I don't know if I've gotten spoiled or if I'm just too green. When we have presentations, we usually have like a timeline or some sort of information background that kind of helps keep me on track when I'm taking my notes here. One of the things that you mentioned is that WJE had, was it 3 scopes of business or 2?
I'm sorry, you said 3 scopes of
Yeah,
business?
you said WJE entered the contract for $659,000, and their first scope was to design and improve when the second scope, I guess, was the electrical and emergency. Was there a third scope?
Yes, that was the parking study to review the traffic flow and the current striping plan, which kind of expanded once we got past the study level and then had the meetings with the hotel. It kind of went into more of what was involved in the agreement with the hotel and the pleasant experience, so it expanded somewhat.
That's for the $305,000 additional dollars? 305,000
The
additional?
305 includes all of the study findings, which was all of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire, all of the building systems. When they determined what was wrong with those systems and what needed fixed, the 305,000 is for them to design those improvements now.
I think that's it, thank you.
All right, Mr. Sharon.
Just being a student of conventions and hotels and things like that a little bit as a participant, my assumption is that all those rooms, all those parking spots will not be for valet. I'm sure the Hilton has to have self-parking as a requirement, because I'm sure the valet is probably $35 a night, and they're going to offer an option of $20 or something like that. Usually is the way it works in hotels. So we are probably planning, I'm sure, of some self-park for the hotel.
Actually, that is correct, Mr. Councilperson. We're meeting with. We're meeting with Hilton, and we're going to get a better understanding of how many of those are going to be specifically for valet. And the intent is the lower level was going to be the valet parking area, because right now, if you go into the garage at any given time, that lowest level of the garage is the one that's most open. So, and then if they have that as the valet area, they'll be able to somewhat double park vehicles down there, so they can actually put a few more vehicles in there. So we're thinking on some of the upper floors, either 3 or 2, and 4 is the lowest level, 3, 2. That's where there'll be some public parking offered also. At the same time, we have the convention center. We have to be able to provide 100 spots for the convention center as part of an agreement. So we have a total of 500, actually it's 510 spots is the magic number that's coming out of the hotel and the convention center that everyone needs to be aware of. This new garage, after we get it finished, completed, and striped, it's going to be able to house, I think it's 1,190 vehicles. So that gives us the difference of 600 and 680, I think, is what's going to be available for the Justice Center employees, court, and the old courthouse, and then also for daily parkers that are utilizing the Justice Center or the old courthouse.
You indicated the valet would be the bottom floor?
That's what we're drawing it up as right now.
And do you have an expedited way for the valet drivers to get down there? Because they have to use
Right.
the elevator.
I think their intent is, and from what my brief discussions with Hilton and they have operators in other locations, that they're going to be utilizing radio, so they'll have people permanently stationed over there. And they'll call for cars as they need them instead of people waiting right outside and running over there to get it. That's at least what I've been. I'm learning a lot about this very quickly.
Okay, well, just the experience of after an event closes down and you've got 150, 200 people waiting to get their cars, it could be pretty frustrating because
I'm sure.
is that experience. We do want to make sure they get a good experience as much as possible because that's the last thing that they'll remember after an event is how that whole retrieval process took.
Right. Another piece to this also that you should be aware of is obviously the RNC is coming in next summer, and the way we're approaching this, we're going to phase the reconstruction project so that all the spaces are opened by that time frame. So the first phase, most likely they'll be working on either the upper or lower level, depending on how the consultant sets it up for phasing. And then after the RNC, the intent is that then we go back into construction again. Just so you're aware that our intent is to have all of those spots open during the RNC event.
Just not to belabor it too much, but if you're going to have people permanently working out of that, so that means you're going to have to put in restroom facilities for all that in the 4th floor and all the other things that for human comforts that you're going to need to have. That it's currently not being utilized that way, is it?
No.
And all that's being costed back to Mr. Gallagher's questions, all that is priced in there?
For the restrooms, there is a restroom in the HPG as it is right now. We're not adding additional restrooms to that facility.
But you're going to make a permanent station for the valets to be working out of on that floor, on the 4th floor.
Right.
That they're going to. Yeah, well, I just want to make sure that we're not going to look at another $50,000 or $100,000 because you got to break that up and put concrete and all those things in there. Some of the garages do have, like I think over at Squires and theirs, they have permanent valets that live downstairs, but it's like office space and all the other things that they need to have in order to support themselves.
Right. Well, I do have a washroom in that facility currently, and that will be getting some slight improvements to it, but it's not anything significant to those improvements to that washroom.
Okay, thanks.
Just to poke fun at Mr. Schron, so there'll be $35 valet parking, $20 self-park, and somewhere you need to find $1 Schron lot.
No, $1.50.
$1.50 Schron lot. Otherwise, Mr. Schron won't be parking anywhere near there. Some of the questions you're hearing, obviously, are operational questions, they're plan questions, and this is part of the challenge that we've continuously had over the last 4.5 years is getting information and approving a dollar amount to a plan we have not yet seen. I think Mr. Schrum brings up a valid point as far as a valet station and what that's going to look like, whether it's restroom facilities or some type of office environment, which it doesn't sound like it's really been contemplated with any seriousness. Is this 19 million? Is this the GMP? Is this the most the county is going to be liable to pay for? What we're being asked to approve on this bond issue, on this, obviously this future issuance of debt? This is not a GMP.
No, it isn't.
Right,
No,
well,
it
see,
isn't.
that's part of the
We'll be
problem.
putting it out to bid.
Yeah, see, well, we kind of got caught in a little bit of an issue with the EOC on issuing bonds and issuing financing without a GMP being in place.
Right.
And, this is putting the cart way in front of the horse by asking us to approve money
Right.
in advance of not only a plan that council's been presented. I don't know, Mr. Jones, when you were Chair of Public Works, did you ever see a recent plan on this?
No, we didn't see.
Okay. And I can tell you as a member of Public Works this year, we haven't seen anything on it either. So, my caution words to the administration are present the plan before you present the financing. Because we're not going to get bitten again like we did with the EOC.
This is going by a traditional design bid build. It's not a design build project.
Oh, I
So
understand.
You should see those things
But when we
sequentially.
bonded out the hotel, we bonded it out based on a GMP.
Right.
And we know where our maximum liability is. We don't know where our maximum liability is on this. We're just being asked to approve $19 million on a plan we haven't seen.
That item itself, I think we can step back from, but the one in particular is the change order request, is that what we're gonna be looking for in the Board of Control, so that we can move forward with the continued design and putting together the bid documents. As for the item about the valet stations, we will be meeting with Hilton within the next 2 weeks here. And I'll continue those discussions and I'll report back to you. But, our whole,
Why is it a challenge for council to not be presented with plans before being asked to approve the financing? It's a theme that's unfortunately starting to perpetuate itself, which I hoped would have ended January of 15. So why are we doing this way? I understand maybe the concept's different, but we're not protected here. Our exposure is not known. Okay, which leads me to my next question. Why is this 1.2 million more than we originally presented?
where's the 1.2?
So originally we were told this would be about 18 million, now it's 19 and change. What's the difference between the two?
Is it the contingency?
Well, I'm sorry, I probably don't have a good feel for what went into the 18 million. So I jumped into this at the beginning of 2014. What I do know is that the current estimate includes all of the things that we discussed for the structural, the waterproofing, all the parking needs, HVAC issues. And when we went through that, we then also had to throw in some time delay and acceleration costs, construction phasing for hotel parking, and possibly security system additions. So we've got a comprehensive estimate for all of the things that need to be included with this. We don't have plans yet because the design drawings haven't been produced. They'll be produced just before the bids are advertised. And at that point, we will have design drawings available.
So this 19 million and change is a better guess than the 18 million
It's,
that we approved, or that was presented previously.
yes, Weiss Cheney went through quite a bit of analysis on reviewing the conditions of the existing system that was out there. And that's where,
But did you say earlier that there were some electrical, mechanical items that weren't reviewed in that original bid, in that original review,
In the URS
the
study,
URS study?
none of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing was even looked at. It was strictly structural, and they did do an estimate for fire protection. Their estimate included about 500,000 for fire protection. When we did a detailed look at it, the whole system needed replaced, which is now 1.4 million. So there were things from their original study, the URS study, that did have to be updated, and it was done with more investigative analysis.
So did something happen between the 500,000 and the 1.4 million? Was
Well-
there an event? Was there a fire? Was there a structural issue that caused, or was this an overlook that they didn't do as thorough an investigation to determine the cost of fixing the fire suppression system?
Unfortunately, I wasn't here until 2014, so I can't answer what was scoped in the original URS study, but the study did identify it needed repaired. When the detailed review of it was done, they decided that it was probably better to replace the system than it was to try and piece together repairs of the system. It would last longer and be more reliable.
Okay. Let me ask a couple questions about the hotel itself, the parking itself. What's the current capacity of the parking at the Huntington? How many spaces?
There's 1,100 spaces.
And the restriping will take it to 1190.
That's right.
And when the administration building was across the street, what was the capacity? Were we almost at 1190 between the court, the administration, visitors, the convention center? Where were we as far as capacity on the 1100?
Actually, when the old administration building was there, I think there was a total of, it was 67. That number seems to jump out as monthly parkers from the administration building that were in there.
So were we, I noticed there were some days where it was card member only, card holder only. There was no daily parking allowed. I'm trying to get a handle on since we've left versus capacity then versus capacity now. Has it, if you're telling me it's only 168, then it should be negligible as far as the capacity difference, but I want to know if that's the case.
Well, we know that a lot of the construction workers are currently parking in there. I know when there's events at the convention center, we have during the week events that there is at times that's when parking's an issue within the HPG. Since it is the closest garage and considered to the hotel and the convention center, it becomes the point garage as opposed to the Willard Park garage for either of those two venues. But as for the number, I'm sorry, I don't have that exact number in front of me, and I'm trying to recall what it may have been.
So I guess, are we at or exceeding capacity more often now than August of last year when we were over there?
No, we're not. We're not reaching capacity, and like I said, down on the lower levels, that
Okay.
it's quite a few open spots right now.
And the convention center commitment is 100 spaces?
That's right. I think it was titled the Brancatelli Law or Edition after the councilman.
Yeah, maybe that's in Willard Park, but not the county-owned garage. What's the hotel commitment?
It's 410 spots. 400 for their guests and 10 for employees.
So half the parking then is committed between the convention center and the hotel, roughly.
Roughly, yes.
The hotel, when it was originally spec'd, had a garage in it. How many spaces were in that garage? Do you remember?
No, actually, I don't, but I can get that information.
I think I remember 260. Does that number ring a bell? Okay.
In fairness, I don't think the garage was ever spec'd in, other than it was a concept.
Concept, right?
Yeah, I think because of a high water table there, they couldn't put it, the garage down any lower.
Right. The, and this, my last question, the study that was referenced, can council please receive a copy of that study?
That's the study from,
The URS study?
Whatever the latest study supporting the 19.3 is,
Yes, the WJE study.
yes. If we can receive, I would suspect that this is obviously supposed to be a finance committee meeting talking about the bonding capacity, but there are significant operational challenges that have been raised here, and I'm sure that those will continue to be raised in a subsequent committee meeting of some sort. This report would obviously be the foundation for that meeting. So the sooner you can get that to our clerk, the better, so that we can begin our review of this process.
right, I brought this to your, the council as a whole's attention. The administration is looking at this seriously on what's the long-term impacts and how to address it for both the convention center and hotel, but also the county employees that are currently using that facility. Looking at options from what other parking facilities are available in the close vicinity to it, and then also looking at the parking rates in the area too. And then even in communication with RTA in regards to how they can provide more direct shuttle service to the Justice Center Old Courthouse to try and help alleviate some of the, to open up some of the spots within the Huntington Park Garage.
Yeah, and I don't doubt that. We're just being asked to approve financing for a project that the plans haven't been fully developed yet. And like I use the EOC as a point of reference. We're not going to get bitten by that bug twice. So I think it's important before we approve the financing. The 343 is a different issue. I understand that, but as far as before we look at this in more depth on the financing component of 19 point some odd million, we understand what the plan looks like. And so that's where you're running into challenges right now, in the sense that we're asked to pay for something before we know really what we're buying. So I would envision that this is going to continue until this item will continue open until we receive satisfaction. We understand what we're paying for. Okay. Any further discussion? No? No? Anything else, Mr. Dever?
No, thank you.
Okay. Anything? No. Okay. All right. Great. Well, thank you. Is there any miscellaneous business before the committee? Hearing none. Any other public comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
Very good. We will stand adjourned. Thank you.